In a critical war, power is necessary, but strategy and wisdom are more important. The same is necessary for allies. Ukraine has a single ally with both military and geostrategic power. Why did Ukrainian leader Zelensky challenge Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkish? Turkey has moves to turn the tide of this war in favor of Kiev. Turkey's diplomatic strategy has saved millions of lives. You can support us by subscribing. Let's explore the realities behind the scenes on this issue and how Ukraine brought the war to this point. As a NATO member and Russia's only remaining link to the West, Turkey has used its unique strength to both arm Ukraine and host several peace tours. Also taking advantage of its geostrategic position, Turkey gained itself the role of mediator in order to reconcile both sides in the war between Russia and Ukraine and made critical moves to appease Russia's aggressive policies among NATO countries. Turkey remains the friendliest to Moscow, but is the only NATO country to supply Ukraine with weapons without the condition of not using them against targets inside Russia. Ukraine managed to effectively use the Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 UAVs in its war against Russia, and the group of Ukrainian soldiers even wrote a song for Turkish-made Bayraktar in a video they shared on social media. In addition to the intense efforts to mediate between Ukraine and Russia, the Turkish government has so far delivered some 35 Bayraktar TB2 UAVs, 24 mini Bayraktar reconnaissance UAVs, LG-230 guided multiple rocket launchers, electronic warfare equipment, 200 BMC Kirpi, MRAP mortars and ammunition. They also sent a number of other aid packages to the Ukrainian army. In addition, Turkey joined the tank coalition formed by Poland. The aim of the coalition is to provide Ukraine with powerful main battle tanks. Turkey's unexpected participation in the coalition worries Moscow because Turkey is one of the countries with the most Leopard 2 tanks among NATO countries. Turkey is one of the largest NATO countries with Leopard 2A4 tanks in its arsenal. As of 2019, the Turkish Armed Forces has 316 Leopard 2A4 tanks. However, there is no clear information about how many tanks Turkey will supply to Ukraine, considering that on average, 25% of the tanks in the inventory of NATO countries will be sent to Ukraine. We can assume that Turkey can send between 60 and 89 tanks to Ukraine. This is a serious number. In addition, Turkish armored vehicles on the Bakhmut front were of great help in pushing back the Russians on the critical front line. Many of the 200 BMC Kirpi armored vehicles were spotted en route to the Bakhmut front. The UAV, designed in Turkey, has become one of the most well-known UAVs in the world due to its use in the Ukraine war. Experts define Bayraktar TB2 drones as a weapon that is relatively cheap, manufactured with ready-made parts, and has deadly power. It was seen and recorded on videos that missiles, laser-guided rockets, and smart bombs carried by Bayraktar TB2 destroyed Russian armored vehicles, artillery, and supply lines many times during the war. Aaron Stein, a senior researcher at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, stated that TB2 viral videos are a perfect example of modern warfare in the age of TikTok. On the other hand, the plan to build an assembly line for drones in Ukraine was ready even before the war. Also, using these UAVs may have saved the lives of Ukrainian pilots who would otherwise have to carry out missions. Researchers noted that TB2 Bayraktar drones are the savior when Ukraine's position is most unstable. Samuel Bendit, a senior researcher at the Center for Naval Analysis, Russian Studies, said in a statement he shared at the beginning of the war that the videos of Russian casualties, thanks to Bayraktar TB2 drones, are a great morale booster for Ukraine. The intensity of Turkey's support for Ukraine, thanks to TB2 drones, should not surprise those who follow the country's foreign policy decisions in recent years. Alongside these supports, Turkey's intervention in the war in Ukraine was the only thing preventing Russia from gaining a firm military foothold on NATO's southern border. In fact, this situation carried great risks for Turkish foreign policy, which directly contradicted Russia's interests. Turkey was already faced with both internal and external threats from actors that received support from Russia or that could escalate its support. Ukraine, on the other hand, has chosen to keep publications about these deliveries to a minimum, rather than announce the extent of all this military support by Turkey. Most deliveries from Turkey were revealed only after they were detected in Ukraine or reported by Ukrainian sources. Most weapons sent from Turkey to the Ukrainian army were donated, while the rest were sold at huge discounts. On the other hand, Turkey's help in the plight of Ukraine has not been entirely a matter of government. Bytek gained international fame with the decision to donate 5 Bayraktar TB2 UAVs to Ukraine after crowdfunding organized. Nations from Lithuania, Ukraine, and Poland achieved their funding goals. The Turkish private defense company also used the collected $32 million for humanitarian defense and reconstruction projects in Ukraine. Interestingly, these donations seemed like only half of being a brave and generous ally. Ukrainian government sources reported that Ukraine received about 15 more Bayraktar TB2 from Baykar for free, and 15 more were sold at a lower price. It was announced that this price covers only because production costs. Baykar also donated 24 mini Bayraktar reconnaissance UAVs to the Ukrainian armed forces. 2 LG-230 guided missiles are believed to have a range of over 75 kilometers against targets such as combat vehicles capable of hitting up to 4 targets, but with a durability of more than 24 hours and the long range of the O&IR sensor. The 230mm tire, LG-230, which can detect much more in combined operations with the TB2, can accurately destroy the weapons identified by Bayraktar TB2 in rapid succession up to a range of 70 kilometers. On the other hand, Turkey has many more military assets that will fit perfectly with the Ukrainian armed forces. Turkey exports almost every weapon system imaginable, in addition to UCAVs and guided missiles. These exported weapons include 122mm D, 122 and 300mm TRV, 300 MRLS, as well as air defense systems such as Hisar A+ with 15km range, Hisar with 25km range, and 35mm Korkut. Also, the Turkish army has such a god of war as a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun SPOG. This weapon is one of the most ideal defense mechanisms to counter the threat posed by both independently circulating munitions. In this regard, Turkey is seen as a serious source of support for the Ukrainian army. NATO continues to search its member states constantly to obtain weapons from the Soviet era. However, the gradual depletion of these resources may first lead to the purchase of more advanced weapons from Turkey on behalf of Ukraine. This situation does not pose any problem for both countries and NATO agreements. It is estimated that providing advanced armament to Ukraine is among Turkey's near-future plans, even if it could be used to attack targets inside Russia. In addition to the predictions that Turkey will become the most important supporter of the Kiev government in the coming period of the war, the serious military power of Baykartek during the Ukrainian war came to the fore by Kartek's rare guided manpads, which has made Turkey a serious military pioneer throughout the defense industry, is of great importance in the fight against the threat posed by Iranian-made munitions by being integrated into Bayraktar TB2. As a result, the fact that the country which has a super military power like Turkey is an ally of the Ukrainian army will strengthen the Kiev administration's hand in possible peace talks. In addition, if the predictions about war ammunition for Ukraine come true, that is, if Turkey continues to help the Ukrainian army in the following time, there is no obstacle for Ukraine not to win this war because the striking military support of the West, the USA and Turkey is seen as a beacon to pull Ukraine out of its darkness. Oh, it almost caused a lot of suffering and words that result in the deaths of thousands of people. It is the bereaved who grieve the most. In Russia, the families of soldiers are experiencing great sadness because the Russian army is suffering a heavy defeat in Ukraine. Putin is sending Russian soldiers to their deaths. The mother of one of the Russian soldiers did something extraordinary. This mother managed to save her son's life. Her heroism became an example for many mothers of soldiers in Russia. The soldiers' mothers took action. But what exactly was this event? How did a mother become Putin's nightmare? As Anchor Daily News team, we have researched the answers to these questions for you. You can support our team to continue this news and develop independent journalism. For this, you can use the Super Thanks button below the video. Let's start if you are ready. It is now common knowledge that the majority of the people in Russia do not support this war. The Russian people want this war to end as soon as possible, but Putin insists on continuing his aggressive policies. This leads the Russian people to find other solutions. Putin has declared mobilization, as is recruiting young men from all over the country. But the families of these soldiers are very worried because the Russian army is suffering a very heavy defeat in this war. Many of the soldiers who go to war do not come back. The Russian army is forcibly recruiting soldiers. A young man from Russian-occupied Crimea was forcibly conscripted into the army. His mother tried to prevent this, but the soldiers detained her son by force. This young man was taken to a Russian military base for training. The desperate mother was very upset. And then something happened. Searching the internet, the woman came across posters of the famous Ukrainian actor Vitaly Matvienko. Matvienko was a famous actor who also appeared in many Russian TV series and was very popular in Russia after the war started. He agreed to be the face of a very important campaign in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government knew that Russian soldiers were being forcibly recruited into the army. A project called I Want to Live was launched to get them to surrender. Matvienko became the face of this project with the videos he shot. Matvienko asked Russian soldiers to contact him to surrender. In this way, he emphasized that the surrendered soldiers would return home safely. The mother of a Russian soldier was very impressed listening to Matvienko's words. She immediately called the I Want to Live hotline. The woman started crying on the phone, saying that her son had been taken into the army at a police checkpoint and that she did not know where he was now. The authorities calmed her down and looked into what they could do to help her. The sad mother wrote down everything she needed to do and got to work. First, she made an official appeal to the defense ministry in Russia, saying that she could not reach her son after a week. She found out in which region her son was. She contacted her son at the Russian military base in Belgorod. After this stage, the contact between the Russian soldiers and his mother continued continuously because the officials on the I Want to Live line gave the Russian mother some special information about this Russian woman, claimed that her son in the army had psychological problems. She contracted a doctor and prepared a fake report on this issue. She said she needed to see him every week to continue his treatment. So the Russian Defense Ministry allowed the soldier to talk to his mother on the phone. Now, they spoke once a week. After a while, the Russian soldier learned that he would be sent to a war zone in Ukraine. This was actually a very important moment for his salvation. His mother informed him about it. On the day he was supposed to meet his mother, a young soldier who had been deployed to a war zone went to the kill zone to use the public phone at a military base. But he did not call his mother because his mother had given him another number. This number was the number of the I Want to Live hotline. When the Russian soldier called this line, he spoke to his mother as if he were chatting with her. The soldier gave information about the area he was in and learned what he had to do to surrender. We are not sharing this information in this article because it is top secret, because this confidential information is very important for this war to end as soon as possible. The Russian soldier surrendered the next day following the instructions he received on the phone. The soldier who safely surrendered to the Ukrainian army was overjoyed. First of all, he met his mother and shared his joy. The Russian mother who met her son was crying with joy. The Russian soldier was given a hot meal and a clean bed. The Russian soldier rested for a few days, and one day he found out that he had a special guest. The famous actor, which Matvienko, the face of I Want to Live project, visited the soldier and thanked him for surrendering. Matvienko was a guest on a radio program in Ukraine and shared a special story with the Ukrainian people. He continued to call for more Russian soldiers to surrender. He also shared the latest information about the project with the public. Matvienko said the hotline was also receiving calls from ordinary Russians who had recently been called up to fight and from senior commanders who did not see their future in Russia. He also said that senior military personnel are being prioritized for surrender because the surrender of these soldiers affects other soldiers in the Russian army. Also, senior military personnel can have a lot of intelligence information. The surrendered Russian soldiers shared a lot of private information about the situation of the Russian army. This information is crucial for the Ukrainian army to organize more successful operations. This is how the Ukrainian army learns critical information about the Russian army. How many Russian soldiers are in which region and the Russian army is attacked. Plans are revealed. The I Want to Leave hotline received around 300 calls every day. Exactly how many Russian soldiers have surrendered through this hotline is not disclosed for security reasons because these soldiers are planned to be accepted as prisoners of war in order to ensure the safety of the surrendered soldiers. It is kept secret how many Russian soldiers have surrendered. The Ukrainian government is preparing a new study on this issue. As a result of the growing success of the Ukrainian army in the war, the number of people who want to flee Russia has increased. Many high-ranking Russian bureaucrats want de facto other countries. The Ukrainian army is preparing a new project to ensure the defection of high-ranking officials. This project will allow top Russian officials to leave the country. This could result in the Russian government losing a lot of power. The Ukrainian army is achieving great success on the battlefield, but this kind of activity of the Ukrainian government is also very important for changing the course of the war. The Ukrainian President Zelensky is changing the course of the war by developing very clever projects. Zelensky is increasing the solidarity of the Ukrainian people. He is also trying to cooperate with the opponents of the war in Russia. He is helping all those who want to surrender so that this war will end faster. Zelensky is disrupting all Putin's plans by making extraordinary moves. What do you think about the surrender of Russian soldiers? Do you think these events will lead to the surrender of more Russian soldiers? What do you think about Zelensky's unusual methods? The day started with a successful drone strike on the Russian oil refinery plant in the Krasnodar region. This is one of the biggest oil refinery plants in Russia that processes more than 6 million metric tons of oil every year. Russian sources reported that the drone happened to hit precisely the oil distillation facility, which is the most important facility in the entire plant. The explosion caused a massive and intense fire that the firefighters struggled to put out the whole night. Simultaneously, the second swarm of drones attacked another oil refinery plant slightly to the west. Russian sources reported that one Ukrainian drone managed to pass through the air defense but failed to detonate due to malfunction. Fortunately, Ukrainians conducted another strike 3 days ago in which one drone successfully damaged one of the oil distillation facilities. There are already more than 10 strikes on the oil-related facilities, only in the Krasnodar region, and even though half of the time Russians managed to protect their facilities. Today, Ukrainians successfully destroyed the 5th facility in the region. Today, Ukrainians released the results of yet another storm shadow missile strike that took place several days ago. This time, Ukrainians struck a base in Eureka, which is located between Berdyansk and Mariupol. Mariupol mayoral advisor Petro and Ryashchenko reported that Russian forces created a base on the former kids' camp resort and that a Ukrainian strike on the Russian concentration area killed 100 Russian personnel and wounded at least 40 others. At the same time, a lot of local residents were also reported about hearing explosions in Mariupol, Berdyansk and Melitopol, and posted footage of air defense rocket contrails. The Ukrainian City Council of Berdyansk reported that there were at least 5 Storm Shadow missiles that directly hit Russian objects in Melitopol. Explosions were recorded near the airfield, and shortly after that, local residents posted confirmation that the explosions caused a fire on the Russian base. Ukrainians also continued destroying Russian forces with hammer strikes. Ukrainian Military Mayor Ivan Fedorov reported that Ukrainian forces targeted Mikhailovka for 2 days in a row on May 29th and 30th. Zaporizhia region occupation official Vladimir Rogov confirmed that Ukrainian forces struck Mikhailovka. He also stated that Ukrainian forces are striking roads and bridges, in particular those connecting Vasilievka and Dnipro. Lastly, hammer strikes were also recorded in the east. Russian sources claimed that Ukrainian forces conducted a hammer strike on Almazna in the Luhansk region. Local residents of the Donetsk region also reported that there were strikes on the Russian bases on the outskirts of Horlivka. The footage seems to confirm these claims, as huge plumes of smoke were seen above the city. Russian forces continue redeploying their forces across Ukraine further, given more and more opportunities for the Ukrainians to destroy areas of forces concentrations. Right now, Russians are deploying motorized rifle and airborne units from the Svatov direction to the northern Bakhmut flank, and the DPR forces from Avdiivka and Volodar to the southern Bakhmut flank, including the city. In the meantime, Wagner forces are moving to the bases in the vicinity of Luhansk. Today, the head of the Chechen Republic announced that armed forces are redeployed to Donbass as well. The increasing presence of Chechen forces is noticed around Bilohorivka, Marinka, and Kherson. Overall, Ukrainians continue degrading Russian forces, taking advantage of the ongoing changes in the composition of troops behind the front. It is also important to note that the targets of the strikes are gradually becoming objects closer to the contact line, and the fact that Russians started complaining about the destruction of critical logistics infrastructure such as bridges in the Zaporizhia region mirrors what we saw ahead of the Kherson counter-offensive operation and signals that we are getting closer to the next one.